the reality is my son is who he is today because of both his parents.
Welcome to Honestly Speaking, a safe place to be unsafe. Life commentary and dialogue from a biblical, logical, cultural, and comical perspective.
Hey everyone. Yes, we are back with one of our favorite guests, my first interview on Honestly Speaking, my sister in Christ, my friend Nikki Afuniga. And to be honest, it was on my heart to have her on here for a while. And I was like, I need to talk to Nick again because she's just a wealth of information. And I was just like, what can I talk to her about? And so I threw out a few topics, and Nick, you were just like, what about parenting or something? And I was like, parenting, because we were going to talk about discipleship. And we've talked about that on Honestly Speaking before. But I think that if you talk about parenting, you kind of encompass it all. And it made me think, like, the more I reflected on the experience and the life of my friend, I was like blown away. I joke and say I texted her and was like, she's been all the moms, like all the moms. She's been all the moms. So Nick, before we go forward, you want to just tell them a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to get into this cool game called Mommy Bingo, and then it's kind of use it as a popcorn game to springboard us into questions and responses.
Right. Thank you so much for having me, Lee. Thank you for thinking of me. I'm always excited. I follow the podcast. I'm not always able to get on live, but I always listen. I'm subscribed to it. So subscribe, and share, y'all.
Hey, that's right.
But I listen to it and I enjoy the dialogue here. Just a little bit about me. I am a mother. I am a grandmother. I'm a wife. I'm like all the things, y'all. I can't even think. I'm a lover of Jesus. I am currently a second year law student, second career, maybe third career, fourth career, whatever you want to call it. I am in the thick of parenting. I jokingly say that parenting has my husband and I in a chokehold right now. And it is so. But one of the things that will be central to our discussion today is just my wealth of experience as a mother. I use a hashtag sometimes when I post pictures of me and my oldest son. I say, all my life I've been a mama, because literally, like, all my adult life I've been a mother. So that's a little bit about me.
All right. So when we say she's been all the moms, I literally was just like, how can we talk about this? So I thought it would be cool for us to play this game. So I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to play this game called Mommy Bingo. And I'm just going to randomly pick things. And if it's yes, then she can say yes, I've been that. And if it's no, then we'll skip on and go to another one. And Nick, if it's anyone you see that you're like, oh, I want to talk about this one, let's do that. All right. Okay. All right. So let me share this. You see that, Nick?
Yep.
All right. So married.
I have been that. I am that.
All right. So let me see. I'm going to get a little symbol here to mark it. Let me see. Where is it? I think it's in like annotations. And now all of a sudden, oh, here it is. All right. I'm going to get a symbol, and I'm going to mark it. Married. Check. Have you ever been a single parent?
I have been a single parent, even though I called myself an unmarried parent, but yes.
Well, park right there. Like, what's the difference between single and unmarried? Because I like the way you frame that. Like, what do you mean by that?
So, I mean, as far as married and not married, at the time I was single for that purpose. But when I thought about parenting, my oldest son's father and I, we co-parented together. You know what I mean? And we were so um not always united, but it really was a united effort in raising our son. And I think that single parent gives the implication that there is no other person there. So
Mm,
at some point over the years, I started saying when I was an unmarried parent,
mm,
because I wanted to, shout out to my oldest son's father because he was there, in the thick of it.
mm. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. All right. What is this, homeschool mom?
Oh yeah. Woo woo, homeschool mom. I was a homeschool mom for 8 years. Um, and I just stopped that last year. So I homeschooled my daughter from, should I be saying all this or you just want me to say yes or no?
No, you please talk.
Okay.
That's what
All
I
right,
want you to
yeah.
do. That's what this is it.
Homeschool mom. I was a homeschool mom to my daughter, who is now 14. I homeschool her from kindergarten through 8th grade. She's now in the 9th grade. And if you count that pandemic, technically, listen, my youngest son, who is 8, who is in traditional school and in public school,
Mm.
I had to homeschool young bull for a little bit during the pandemic, and it was awful. So, yes.
What I love about what you just said was that there was even a blending in the type of education that you gave your young children, and there was also the usage of the Philly term young bull, BOLBABOUL. It's like you want to say boy, but not in a disrespectful way. You don't want to
Right.
call a young man a boy, but you just want to say young male. And it's like Philly, young bull. I
Right.
love that. I loved all of that. Now with your oldest son, speaking of which, I think this says a parent of an adult child.
That I am
Okay, so how old is your oldest?
35.
Well, wait a minute.
Yeah. What?
I don't know if anyone sees Nick's face, but she don't look like she much older than 35 herself.
I had it when I was 3. No, I had my son when I was 16.
Hey, so that's this one right here. We want to check that one off. So talk to us a bit about being a teen mom. What was that like? And I know you may park here longer than you have on the other questions, but that's fine too.
Yeah. So, obviously, me being a teen mom is a huge part of my story. I wouldn't be able to use the hashtag all my life I've been a mama had I not literally been a mom for all of my adult life.
Mm.
But yeah, I got pregnant with my son when I was 15. I became a mother at 16. On my sweet 16th birthday, I was pregnant. And it was a lot of shame for me that was
Mm.
connected to that, even though it was very regular to see girls having kids or being pregnant, growing up in Philly. I grew up in Philly, woo, Winfield to be exact. Um, but it was a lot of shame for me
Mm.
because, my internal compass value system, I was raised to believe, I was not raised as a believer, but I was raised to believe that, children should come within the context of a married relationship.
So wait,
And
let me
Mhm.
park right there for just for a second. So you mean to tell me that you weren't raised as a Christian and yet you were raised with morality?
Yes.
Do y'all hear that, Christians? You can be raised with morality, even biblical morality, and it not be known that it is biblical morality. I just wanted to just say that
Yeah.
to the point that there was an internal knowing that her having this child under the circumstances that she had caused her to feel some type of way about that. She knew
Yeah.
that it was going against her own morality. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, it was I always tell people, I wasn't raised in a Christian home, but I was raised in a moral home.
Mhm.
And like I said, with that morality came the idea, I had this vision when I was a kid, me and my childhood best friend, we would say we were going to get married, have 2 daughters, and then divorce our husbands. So
What?
clearly my
Wait,
morality was skewed.
why?
Crazy.
Why the divorce? Like, what
I
did
don't
that
even
mean?
know. I don't even remember. Like this was like under 10 years old. Like why? It was almost like he was only needed for one purpose, to have
Mm,
children. You know what I mean?
mm.
I don't even know what the divorce situation was about. And that was before my own parents had got divorced. So I don't even know
Wow.
where
So
that
your
came from.
parents weren't even divorced when you came from a 2-parent home and was thinking about when you get older, you want to
Yes,
be of a divorced mom.
which is crazy. Because my parents didn't separate until I was like 12.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I don't even know where that bizarre logic came from. But yeah, so it was it's a lot of shame for me.
Mm.
And it was my son's father was there. He was like 100% present. Um People would comment like over the years on how united we were and how, ideal of a baby daddy, baby mama relationship that we had because we
Now,
didn't
how
stay.
old was he?
He was 18.
So there was, you both were basically kids,
Yeah.
like no
Yeah.
prefrontal cortex development
No,
in
not
the
at
near
all.
future for a while.
No,
Okay.
exactly, exactly. And I also had these goals, I wanted to go to college right out of high school. I was in a magnet high school and it was just college prep. And so my pregnancy and becoming a mom was a threat to that, even
Mm.
though I still had a significant amount of support from his family, from my family. My mom was just amazing, and supportive. And I was able to go to college. I was able to graduate on time and do all the things and live a life, the rest of my teenage life, experiencing teenage life, like going to parties and all that stuff. But at the same time, while I was at parties or when my son went to his dad's on the weekends. And so when I was, being a teenager, there were limits to what I would do.
Mm.
Because in my mind, I'm a mom.
Right.
And I
So
was
you
very
would
much
get wild, but you wouldn't get as wild.
right. And my wild, somebody else might be like, you ain't even do nothing. What are you talking about? You was wild. You know what I mean? But it was
Mm-hmm.
wild to me.
Right.
Just being, growing up in a moral home, I had a significant conservative value system.
Mm. So
Considering
do you think that your morality, like, why wasn't like abortion, or was abortion an option? If so, what, like, why wasn't it?
I'm
Talk to me
so
about
glad you
that.
asked that question. So I was moral, but the reality of what abortion is
Mm.
was not in my mind at that time.
Mm.
So I was all for getting an abortion.
Mm.
We just couldn't do it. We just they had the money.
Oh.
So even the reality, but I was bent on
Mm.
doing it
Mm.
because my focus was the inconvenience and all those different things.
Mm.
But obviously, how many know God has another plan?
Hey,
Um,
hey. God
so
blocked it.
exactly. Praise
Right.
God, he blocked it, Um, but yeah, I just abortion was a thing. And I don't remember how I knew about abortion. I just
Mm.
knew, how I knew? Neighborhood kids. Because people was getting pregnant and people were having
Mm.
abortions. And I knew that it was this thing that you could get done that you wouldn't have to worry about having a baby. But the reality of the humanity of my child's life was not something that was.
Mm. Can we just pause for a second in order to reflect on how hard it is being a teenager, especially in today's world? And the reason why I say that is, excuse me, you have the ability to produce children,
Mm,
but you don't have the mental capacity to understand the weight of what it is that you're doing. Your body is saying, I want to do the things that are going to produce children, while your mind can't even fully grasp the weight of what it's like to even produce a child, to the point that to you, like, abortion was kind of like nebulous. It was like this thing, like it wasn't real. It was like, you know, like it could be, it could not be, you know what I mean? Like that is wild. The ability to jack our lives up. And it also speaks to me to just the grace of God. You know, the Bible says where sin abounds, grace abounds more. And I think a lot of times young people, and then it made me think about young people today. Young people don't even know what they're getting into when they do some of the things that they do, to your point. Like, wow.
Yeah, I mean, the significance, not to mention my own trauma, you know, from my parents separating a couple years prior, not to mention peer pressure, not to mention, you know, at that time I was disconnected from my dad. You know, it was so many factors, obviously, that went into the decision to involve myself in this relationship that was beyond my level of maturity to be able to navigate. I'm talking about the relationship with my son's father. And then the product of that was my son. You know what I mean? So just not having the ability to navigate any of that, but becoming a mother and then being committed to, oh, I'm gonna be a mom. Like, ain't nobody gonna tell me that I can't raise my son and that I can't do it right. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And my son's father, like, you know, we don't gotta depend on our parents. We're gonna do this, you know what I mean? And that was his drive. And I'm gonna take care of my son, you know. If that meant him dropping out of high school in his senior year and, you know, going to work with his stepfather full time so he can take care of his son. And so I could finish school and go to college because he knew that was important to me.
And that's what he did.
And that's what he did.
Wow.
And that is God's grace.
Yeah, that is God's grace all over that. So wait, so the average Christian will be like, well, why didn't you marry him then? Like what?
Well, so this is another thing with being a teenager, right? So this was a you know, very intense relationship. I used to call it a mini marriage, not when I was a kid, but as I got older and I could see it just was too much. Like, I can't imagine my daughter being in a relationship that intense. And, you know, he did ask me to marry him when I was 18. And I was like, what are you talking about? Nah, man. Because I was 18 and clueless, you know what I mean?
Yeah, just clueless.
Yeah, and you know, because we do grow and we do mature and we do grow out of life stages, I progressed in maturity to the next life stage. But in doing that, he did not look as attractive to me as he looked when I met him when I was 14.
So you're not saying he was dusty.
No, right.
So all the manosphere, red pill folk who are just like, see, this is what happened. The modern woman got to stay in school and the man sacrificed himself. And then she looked back on him and was like, you dusty. That's not, this ain't that. Okay.
So we just were very different. Our backgrounds are different. Our family environments were different. Mine wasn't better, his wasn't better, but we really just came from different worlds. And I think because we came from different worlds and I was, you know, growing into my identity, he was growing into his, we were just very different. Like if you looked at us all these years later, people would be like, what? Like, how are y'all? I was a kid back then, you know what I mean? So I felt like we were like this. And while I think was an amazing father, especially given being 18 years old, I think he did a phenomenal job with what he had. But he just wasn't the person for me. You know what I mean? And we still remained friends many, many years after we broke up. He still was somebody that I could rely on. When I did finally graduate from college, because I was then I stopped to work and I was going part-time and everything. When I finally finished my undergraduate degree, many years later, we were not together. He came to my college graduation because he knew how important that was to me. And that speaks to how he cared for me. And he felt responsible on some level that because I became a mother and he wanted to be there. Right. So he came when he brought my son to the graduation, he came to stay and he was very intentional about that. I know this was important to you and I wanted to see this, you celebrate this moment.
All right. So Nikki, did you reciprocate that in any way? Or were you just like, thank you, I'm going to take all of these things and I'm going to just be great? Like,
so I can't really say other than, speaking highly of him whenever I get the opportunity. And, I'm talking about co-parenting. That's the most reciprocity, I think. I mean, that respect, as far as, at this point, our kid is grown, but,
So do you think, and I reason why I asked you that is because what I don't want is for women who have a more quote unquote independent bent to think that, and when I say independent, please y'all, don't come to me with this fourth, third, fifth wave feminist. That ain't what I want. I'm saying the desire to discover one's own autonomy and to walk in the purpose that the Lord has designed you for. That's what I mean. Okay. For someone who is like that, a young woman who's like that could hear your story, I believe that the enemy will tell that young woman that she should be quote unquote independent, if that makes sense. I gotta remove this because so because the enemy will tell that young woman that she will be more than likely independent, the issue I think is, how do you make sure, or do you have any advice for those particular young ladies to, like, if you could speak to your younger self and you see him, how would you encourage yourself to encourage him without you kind of reverting and continuing? And like, what would you say?
Well, a big thing I would say is to realize that the significance of the co-parenting relationship, like I remember when I was a teenager and he would be doing stuff or whatever. And I remember my mom and her friends being like, this is great. And I'm like, what you talking about? He's doing what he's supposed to do. So I kind of took it for granted. He was doing what he was supposed to do. Right. But that was still something to be acknowledged. Right. You know what I mean? And expressing the gratitude that the reality is, my son is who he is today because of both his parents. You know what I mean? Our deficits or whatever. If his father wasn't there at all, would he have had some of the benefits and blessings that he's had in his life? Probably not. Right. Me being the woman I am today is because God used that person in that season of my life to be kind of some of the supports in place to keep me, you know what I mean? To keep me on the path that I needed to go. It was his mother who took care of our son during the week when I was in school, that first year of his life. And he came to my house on the weekends. And then when we reversed it, it was his mom who looked after our son. Shout out to my son's other grandma, who calls me her daughter-in-law, and my current husband, her son-in-law, which is a whole crazy thing, but and my daughter, her granddaughter, that's crazy.
I mean, that's my mom. My mom's that way with my brothers through my father. They all call my mom.
Right.
Yeah.
So you know
yeah.
those type of people. But I think gratitude is the biggest thing I would say. Like, you know, I wasn't independent. You know, as a matter of fact, I depend on him a lot on many levels, like emotionally. Just
I just want to park there because I do think, again, the enemy hates family. And I think what he wants to do is to pervert things and get us pitting at one another since Genesis 3. Like we see this, you know what I mean? Like that woman you gave me, you know what I mean? And she like, the devil made me do it. Like it's like the enemy hates family. And what I hear you saying is, although I still see God's sovereignty over everything, even though I had not yet called on the Lord.
Yes.
But I had come from a place culturally that had this morality that was, you can tell, was akin or adjacent to God, biblical morality. And yet I still felt shame for falling short of that. And even in that, I still knew that for me to do this, I needed support. Yes. And I think that society tells women now, you don't need anybody, which is not true. And then society flips it on the other end and tells men that if she doesn't need you, then that's not a good woman. You know what I mean? It's so bizarre. And so I love what you said. You said, no, I recognize my needs. In order for us to be successful as a unit, there is some interdependency going on.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. All right. So, and I know we're going to have to pause and come back out in a couple of minutes. So we're probably going to do a part 2 of this. But for right now, how about this? You mentioned your youngest child. Like, yes. Are you an adopted mom?
I am an adoptive mom. For the past 5 years. Our youngest son is 8, going on 9. We adopted him when he was 3. And it's a unique situation, not an unheard of situation, but it's a unique situation in that he was an older child, but it was a private adoption from his birth mom. That wasn't our goal. We were going foster to adopt. And I was at a point in my life where I was like, nah, I'm good. I don't want no more kids. Like, no, it's over with. But the burden for child advocacy would not escape my heart. And we left our former church and kind of, when all the cobwebs were cleared and I felt the sense to pray, to ask God what was next. I had no idea it was going to be this. But I remember hearing a sense from the Lord, child advocacy. And I just prayed and continued to pray. And I randomly saw these documentaries on adoption. And my heart was like so stirred. Like I never, ever, ever thought about adoption in my life, like ever. And I started to pray about it, like quietly. I didn't talk to my husband either. I just prayed because I'm like, Lord, are you saying something? And before I'll speak it out to anybody, let me be clear in what you're saying, right? Are you leading? I feel like you're leading me to pray about this. And then one day I was sitting there and I said to my husband, how would you feel about like adopting a child? He said, I've been praying about it. I was just waiting for you. Like just so matter of factly. And he was like, he didn't want to influence me. He didn't want to pressure me. So he just prayed. And then we started praying together. And it led to us adopting our youngest son 5+ years ago. Amen. This coming May, it'll be 6 years. And His name is the same as my oldest son's name.
Isn't that something? Look at God.
So I have 2 sons named Daniel.
And what's your grandson's name?
His name is also Daniel. And my middle name is Danielle. So we're fans clearly of the God is my judge type of name.
I think there's a biblical theme going on. So what we're gonna do, folks, is make sure you tune in, because I'm pretty clear that Nick's gonna fill most of this out. So make sure you tune in and you come back in our next segment on Mommy Bingo and continuing in parenting and parenting advice with Honestly Speaking, starring your sister Nick. All right, folks.
Wait. Please don't forget, like, share, subscribe. Share, subscribe, and like. Oh yeah, and as we always say, love God, love your neighbor, and take care of yourself.